Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. We got some massive Star Wars news today, finally, after a bit of a dry spell, as StarWars.com put out what was a relatively short press release that I'm actually just going to read in total to you guys. The Mandalorian and Grogu are embarking on a new adventure to movie theaters. Directed by Jon Favreau, produced by Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy, and Dave Filoni, The Mandalorian and Grogu will go into production in 2024. I have loved telling stories set in the rich world that George Lucas created, said Favreau. The prospect of bringing Mando and his apprentice Grogu to the big screen is very exciting. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have ushered into Star Wars two new and beloved characters, and this new story is a perfect fit for the big screen, said Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm. The Mandalorian and Grogu will lead Lucasfilm's ongoing future development slate, including films helmed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, James Mangold, and Dave Filoni, who is currently developing Ahsoka Season 2, among those in the works. Alright, so a really short press release, but there's a lot in there. First of all, the big thing, obviously, The Mandalorian is moving to the big screen. The thing that I most wonder is, what does this mean for the future of The Mandalorian as a character, for his place on Disney Plus, for kind of the rest of his story? I initially thought this would be a replacement for Season 4, given the fact that it seems like this has to be coming fairly soon. Like, they must have started production or pre-production on it, given that it's supposed to lead their ongoing feature development slate. However, Deadline, who's generally fairly reliable when it comes to Star Wars news, has said at present a fourth season of the hit series is also in development. Will this come before the movie, after the movie? I really don't know, but I feel like this in a way sort of justifies my feeling that The Mandalorian Season 3 was a bit of busy work, something that I know a lot of people also felt. It's also possible, however, that Season 4 will come out after the movie and maybe even after more of the Mando-Verse stuff, and will be a return to more small-scale adventures. Because if there's one thing that I'm pretty willing to say about the film, it's not going to be a small stakes thing. This is going to be almost, my guess is, a prequel to the Heir to the Empire movie, which surprisingly, this is not. Like, a lot of people thought that there'd be one Mando-Verse movie, it would be Heir to the Empire, and then that would wrap things up, or at least would be the first part of a trilogy, but apparently not, because the press release has that as a separate film. I also kind of wonder whether this has to do with Pedro Pascal. Pedro was not present for The Mandalorian Season 3. There were no scenes with his helmet off, to the detriment of the season, in my opinion. However, TV and streaming is one thing, you know, big movies, that's another. To be the star of a Star Wars movie, I think that's just a huge feather in your cap that he may be interested in. But I mean, there's so much about seeing The Mandalorian on the big screen that excites me. For one, I've often felt like the show either fits really well in one of two ways. Either it's an adventure by the week type of thing, which it's been at times, or it does the Disney Plus, you know, multi-part movie. That doesn't always work well for TV shows, but for a film, I think it could actually be great. I've talked a lot about how a lot of these shows feel like they're trying to really force the format into just a really long movie, so I'm excited to see what they do with, in a way, a bigger chunk of time, but also less time overall, but more budget. I don't know what the plot will be. I'm not sure if this will involve Thrawn. I wonder whether it will involve Luke and the Jedi. I assume Boba Fett will probably make an appearance. I mean, that'll bring some people to the theater. I do think, however, that this is a super important movie. Star Wars needs to have a good theatrical release. I think it needs to have a really big win, and I hope Mando can deliver that. There is something magic about Star Wars on the big screen. There just is. The sets, the sound effects, the music, it's all brought to the next level with the budget, and that's what I'm most excited about. Potentially sandwiching it between two seasons of TV is a bit weird, but hey, I'll take it. The line between film and TV and special presentation is getting more and more thin every day anyway. But they really gotta nail this, or else it's going to hurt the future films of the Mando-Verse, and it could torpedo any more seasons of not just The Mandalorian, but many Disney Plus shows. The other really big thing that I noticed is that Ahsoka Season 2 is officially confirmed. Now, for me, I had no question really whether Ahsoka Season 2 would eventually release, but it is nice to have that official confirmation. It seems like the show was pretty successful, and I mean, it was largely a setup for something more, but in my opinion, not quite enough to jump right into a movie. Overall, I gotta say, I really enjoyed Ahsoka. I do think that the show, in hindsight, was hurt a bit by having perhaps the last episode be the weakest overall. It was not super well directed. I think the cliffhangers were good, but it just didn't really do enough to nail sort of the final impression on the show. Whereas you compare that to like The Mandalorian season 2, I mean, that season overall was phenomenal, but had it not been, that last episode probably would have colored people's reactions in a positive way regardless. My main hope here is that The Mandalorian season 3, while not awful, ends up being more of an anomaly. The writing, just overall not great. It felt like it lacked vision with all of these stories now officially announced, including the Mandalorian movie, which, by the way, is it going to be called The Mandalorian and Grogu? Is that just a placeholder? I don't know. I personally think that they will get The Mandalorian in the title just because it's got such name recognition. But anyway, that they now have the full narrative arc sort of ready. And there's a lot here because we've got Skeleton Crew. I've got a theory about that I'm probably going to do a video on, and how that will sort of tie into Thrawn's return. Additionally, Ahsoka season 2, 2 movies. There's a lot. I will say, after season 3, my hope for The Mandalorian has also kind of been that they can move away from the big events of the universe and it can find its roots as a more serialized Western. We'll need more than 8 episodes per season, but I would be okay if The Mandalorian became more of a mood show. You tune in to see what he's up to that week, you know, more like the classic Flash Gordon TV show. It was also nice, I guess, to have confirmation that the other movies are still happening. Charmaine Obaid-Chinoy's movie is the Rey New Jedi Order film. James Mangold is tackling the kind of the opposite thing, Dawn of the Jedi. Then, of course, as mentioned, Dave Filoni is doing the Thrawn thing. I do want to mention one last point, and this is kind of a really small one. People were saying that they thought this art was AI generated. It's definitely not. And listen, I'm totally somebody who is more than happy to get on Disney about their bad art practices. But no, I mean, it is a bit weird around his hands because the Mandalorian has his hand over Grogu, who has his hand over the Beskar chestplate thing he has. The ship is a bit weird, but this is clearly quick concept art, and it's in Ryan Church's style, which makes sense because Ryan Church is the artist. His work definitely has sort of a shiny aspect to it, which probably contributes somewhat to the AI generated concerns, but no, this is real art by one of the best Star Wars concept artists. That's all I've got for today, though. Let me know your thoughts on all this news down below.